Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. My name is Dr. Gill Barham, and you are listening to the very first episode of Radiant Menopause podcast. I'm so excited because this has been in the planning for a long time. It's been a long launch process because I wanted to get this right, and I wanted to be able to provide you with the best quality entertainment, education and inspiration to empower you, wonderful ladies, to have the best and most amazing radiant menopause. But it's not only about that. We're actually going to be talking about all things midlife. So family, relationships, I don't know, moving house, what you wear, what you look like, how you feel, your maybe even a little bit about spiritual journeying, all things health and well-being. And of course, we will talk about the menopause as well. So why am I doing this? Well, it's very clear that a lot of women are very confused about what is happening to them when perhaps they get over the age of 40 maybe, which is the typical time to experience those beginning symptoms of the menopause, so what's called the perimenopausal period. And so many women that I meet, as soon as I tell them that I'm a menopause coach, say, oh, can I talk to you? I'm experiencing this, and is this normal? And every question that I see in Facebook groups, on forums, it's the same questions over and over again. And I think that we're just not talking about this enough. I know for a fact that my own mother and I never ever talked about the menopause. Well, we never talked about periods either, actually. So it's very unlikely that women, particularly of this age, particularly around 40, 50, they may still even not be cognizant or aware of when the menopause starts for them and what to expect and how to manage it. So what I want to be able to do is to share some insights that I've had over the 15 or so years that I've been experiencing menopause myself. Yes, I'm a bit of an expert. And in fact, my first flush was at 39 in Tesco's. I can remember it vividly, and I am now 59, so actually that's 20 years. And it's not to say that you're going to experience that either, but I think you can probably see that I have quite a lot of experience, personal experience, and also experience from other women that I've met and worked with. So if you are the person that's feeling a little bit confused and a little bit dazed about what to expect from this period in your life and how to deal with it better, if you're feeling a little bit lost, maybe a little bit anxious or depressed even about the changes that you are undergoing, the transition that you are feeling, and you're really not sure who to reach out for help, what to do, what to take, what not to take, if anything, what you should and shouldn't be doing in terms of your health and well-being, and also how it's likely to affect every area of your life, including your work, your relationships, then this podcast is the place for you. Because not only am I going to share with you my insights and what I've learned from all the wonderful people that I've been working with over the last few years, but I'm going to bring some of those people on too and talk to them. And what I really am keen to do is to involve the men in this, because the more we can educate men about what is happening to us ladies, the better the time they're going to have, and the better time you're going to have as well, because we are definitely in this together. So, but why should you listen to me? Well, I just want to briefly share my story with you a little bit to kind of frame what's going to happen in the whole podcast series, and to be able to give you a bit of insight as to, you know, what my journey's been like, and why I'm in the position that I'm in at the moment, and why I'm so fortunate to be able to shed some light and empower you in this way. So if you're with me in 2012, it was November the 1st, we're sitting in a small dark office, and opposite is a lady in a blue nurse's uniform. She has white spiky hair and glasses on a bead around her neck. Jill, I've got your results here, and they're not good, frankly. Your blood pressure's up, your cholesterol's up, your weight's up by about 2 stone since the last time I've seen you. I really don't think you're looking very well at all. It's 15 years since we've known you, isn't it? you know, with all the stuff that we've done with the children and everything, and I've never seen you looking so low. Tell me, what on earth is going on? Are you okay? Now, this was the first person that had asked me, was I okay, for as long as I could remember. Oh, I just really feel awful. I'm not sleeping and my moods are all over the place and I'm really not coping with work. I'm really worried about my dad and I'm worried about my kids and I'm worried about my husband. I, I just think I'm seeing things in black and white, you know, all the colour seems to have gone from my life. I just seem to be working and really, you know, not enjoying myself at all. Well, look, Jill, I've never seen you so low, so I'm going to make you an appointment with the doctor. I'm going to try and get you in this afternoon. But listen, I got a question for you. Have you had any thoughts of harming yourself? Oh my God. Here was Dawn, somebody that had known me for all this time, asking me, Gill Barham, practically superwoman, you know, was I suicidal? I couldn't believe it. But has that ever happened to you when you get a question thrown at you out of the blue and you think, where did that come from? But you see, she did know me and she had known me, and what she saw in front of her was not the Gill Barham that she first met and that she'd actually, you know, seen fairly recently. The decline actually had been fairly rapid at the end, although in hindsight, it had probably happened gradually over maybe 2 years. So I went home that weekend, and after seeing the doctor that afternoon, who offered me antidepressants, which I politely declined, thought about what I was going to do. I made a list of all the things that were positive and all the things that were negative in my life. And at the time, it seemed that the negative things were really based around my job, and particularly around the woman that I worked with, who we called Miss Management. And so I resigned on the Tuesday. Quite a brave decision. And my friend Sarah called me to see if I was okay. And I told her what I'd done. And she said, okay, what are you going to do now? I said, I don't really know. And she said, well, look, with your nursing background, why don't you come and join our nutritional team? I think you'd just love it. And it would certainly help you kind of get to the bottom of your health and, you know, your well-being. And also, you know, you'd make a great Pilates teacher. What is it, 13 years you've been with me? Yeah, why don't you go and train? Body control is, you know, great. You could go and do that. And anyway, why don't you come to this meeting next Tuesday? Sarah Salmon's coming. She's a naturopath, one of the principal naturopaths in the country. I think you'd really be interested in what she's talking about. She's talking about gut health, actually. So I decided to investigate all of this. I went to the meeting on the Tuesday and I crept into the back of the room. Have you ever done that when you're new somewhere? Lots of people all seem to know each other, and my confidence levels were low at the time. So I hunkered in, sat in the back row. But I was fascinated straight away by what Sarah was sharing. And she was talking about the relationship between having a strong gut microbiome and a strong immune system. And that if your gut is compromised in any way, that your immunity is likely to be poor. Now, this rang so true with me because you see, in the June of that year, the straw that had broke the camel's back, I think, if you heard that expression, was the fact that for 3 weeks I'd had a really tough time with my middle child, my son, Matthew. He'd come home from university with what seemed like another throat infection. But this time they couldn't get on top of what was going on, despite several visits to the doctors, the drop-in centre, and eventually a couple of visits to the emergency department. Eventually, he was in so much pain that he couldn't eat, he couldn't drink, he'd stopped talking to me. And I was so very scared and worried because my sense was that this was very serious, but I didn't know what it was. The last time we went into hospital after 24 hours, I was sitting by his bedside, still really upset and worried. His pain, at least, was being controlled because he was on steroids whilst he was in the unit, but we still had no diagnosis. And on this particular day, in this white, cold room with the telephones ringing off their, you know, all the time outside and people running up and down, I just felt so desperately alone with Matthew. until the door burst open and in walked this young doctor with a white coat and a stethoscope around his neck, a long straggly beard, dark hair, Asian appearance. Mrs. Barham, I'm so sorry that we've taken so long to get to you this morning. We've been in theatre, but I have a diagnosis for Matthew. He's got epiglottitis. We've got him on the right medication now, and he's going to be with us for a few days, but he'll be fine when you get him home. And I'm really sorry that we've taken so long, but this is really rare, this disease, and it's normally seen in babies and in elderly people, not in your 15 and a half zone rugby playing student son. I remember feeling so relieved. Matthew was relieved, of course, too, and I went home that evening after visiting and looked epiglottitis up on Dr. Google. Have you ever done that? Even though, I was a former nurse, I'd never heard of it. And, I can still feel the hairs going up on the back of my neck now when I read that this is actually a life-threatening disorder, and that if the epiglottis, this little flap that sits at the top of the windpipe, swells, then it cuts off the air supply. Dead boy. Dead boy. And I knew that was what I was sensing. My gut reaction was telling me that this boy was in serious trouble. And every time I went into any doctor's office or the emergency department, I kept saying to them, my son was diagnosed with irritable bowel syndrome when he was 11. Do you think this has got anything to do with this? And nobody took any notice of me. But on that Tuesday evening, when Sarah talked about the gut and immunity, all of a sudden things clicked into place. And it was very clear that actually his gut problems probably caused this low immunity after a period of, being a student, drinking too much, eating processed foods, and his gut microbiome was definitely not in a good place. That his immunity would be low, and therefore this is how he ended up with this life-threatening disorder. So you can imagine, can't you? I really needed to sort this out. I really needed to look at ways in which I could improve his gut, and also by definition, look at ways that I could improve my own health too. By the February of that year, February the 24th, to his 21st birthday, we had started onto a gut rehab program. We both lost weight. We both actually looked and felt 100 times better. And as a consequence of that, people began to ask me what I was doing. And so I kind of fell into the holistic nutritional field and built a business around it, which ultimately ended up me writing a book, contributing to several other books, to appearing on radio shows, to running my own radio show interviews, briefly my own digital TV show, podcasts, appearing on the BAFTA stage, writing for editorials and publications, and speaking all over the world actually as an inspirational health and wellbeing coach. And really everything that I've done has always been focused really on women, and latterly, much more importantly, and specifically around elevating and educating the whole thing about menopause and what that means for us. Because what I've realized is that the majority of women are unaware of it, uneducated about it, and ill prepared for it. And so what I wanted to be able to do was to empower women, not only the ones that I see directly, but empower women worldwide to be able to talk about this. This has been a taboo subject and the elephant in the room for far too long. And now it is the time for us to really get all of this out in the open. The menopause affects half the population. So why are we not making this a subject that we talk about on a regular basis? And what I want to share with you is that, I was 51 when I went for that Well Woman clinic appointment. I was a year late, by the way. It took me a year to get there because I was Superwoman, remember, and far too busy. But at no point did anybody mention the menopause to me, the nurse or the doctor or anybody subsequently, really. And so what's really clear about, looking back in hindsight, it's a great thing, isn't it? Is that I know that there are millions of women who are in the same position as me, even now, who are showing symptoms and on my website, please check it out, because there is a symptom checker, and I think I have listed something like 45 symptoms of the menopause, and I'm sure that there actually are a lot more. So, this is all about becoming more aware of you, what the possibilities are. It's not to say that you're going to have all 45 symptoms, by the way, but what I wanted to be able to do was to make sure that women like me are not in the same position and floundering around, wondering what on earth's going on, feeling like you're going mad, when actually this is all perfectly normal. I'm really privileged to have been offered lots of help by various different friends and mentors and coaches over the years that have got me to the stage where I am now. So it's been quite a journey for me. So I think you'll probably realise that there's a lot of water that's gone under the bridge. So I'll be sharing a lot of my own experiences, but also those of other inspirational women that have gone through early menopause, maybe in their 20s and 30s, women who've had surgical menopause, so something that's happened to them that has pushed menopause on. Like me, I was 45 when I had my hysterectomy, and although I had my ovaries preserved, it pushed me straight into the menopause. I want to introduce you to people who use alternate and natural and complementary therapies. So I have, for example, amazing energy workers that I've interviewed and have lined up interviewed for you, natural pharmacists who are going to talk to you about various different natural remedies. I'm going to talk to you about those myself in one of the next 2 episodes too. We are going to talk about HRT and really the facts and myths about it, busting some of the myths around hormone replacement therapy, and making sure that you can make a very informed choice about what is right for you. And I'm not here to tell you what you should and shouldn't do. It's really just about educating and helping you to make the most of your wisdom years. That's the whole plan about this. But we'll also be doing some lighter stuff, looking at beauty and skincare and image consultancy and everything, family, relationships. I've got an amazing sex therapist who I interviewed. That episode's coming up. She's actually a coach and sex therapist for men and couples. So her big passion is helping men to understand how women work so that they can both have a better sex life. Because that's really important, obviously, isn't it? And particularly ladies, as we go through this transition and maybe we're suffering with low libido, we're maybe having vaginal issues. So, that's another one of the episodes that's coming up. So I think episode 5, I'm going to talk to you about vaginal atrophy, vaginal dryness. If the menopause is the elephant in the room, well, vaginal atrophy is 7 elephants in the room. 80% of women will at some point suffer with vaginal atrophy. For some women, it's the first symptom they get. For women like me, it's one of the latest symptoms, and the one that drove me to looking into hormone replacement therapy. So I'm going to talk to you about those. I'm going to share an interview that I did with an acupuncturist colleague of mine who interviews me about my journey. So we'll talk about that. I'll put that episode up into the series of podcasts as well. But one of the biggest things I believe that affected me was not only in terms of menopause, in terms of general health as well, is stress. I think stress is the biggest cause of inflammation and dis-ease in this 21st century world. So amongst all of the other episodes, the loading episodes, the introductory episodes, which is just me talking, I'm also going to put in little mini pauses, and these are my Stress in the Midlife Women episodes that I recorded in the Alps last year. So I talk about the causes of stress and how to manage your stress in these little sort of 5 to 10 minute episodes. So they're great for you if you've only got small periods of time. I'm also going to be loading the episodes after this on such things as empty nesting. So the things that were the really front of mind for me are coming out first. And empty nesting syndrome was a big thing for me. And so I wanted to make sure that one of the first episodes I did was talking about that. And also I've put an episode in here, which is a webinar that I've been running about anti-aging. and also about immunity, because this is at the end of the first lockdown of COVID, and it's very clear now that we know how important having a good gut microbiome is to your survival, even if you catch COVID-19. It's very clear that the people who have immune systems that are lowered by compromised microbiomes are the ones that are falling foul of the disease and actually dying of it as well. So one of the most important things you can do is to understand how to raise your vibration, not only energetically and emotionally and spiritually, but raise your vibration within your body as well. And that is all related to your gut. So that's an important episode. So there's huge amounts coming up. I have episodes already in the can with a fellow nutritionist, Claire Shepherd, who talks about what to eat in order to keep you well and to manage the menopausal symptoms. I also talked to Elizabeth Ellis, who is a friend of Claire's, and they've been running an amazing campaign, Know Your Menopause, to try and get menopause talked about. And she shares her extraordinary story with us too. I also have episodes recorded with some of my very, very best friends, and one of those is Dr. Marion Bevington, who is this one of my spiritual queens, who talks about trauma and the relationship of experiencing illness and disease, and also hormone disruption as a result of childhood trauma particularly. That's a fascinating episode. And I also have a wonderful episode with Senator Yvonne Thompson, MBE. Dr. Thompson is a pioneering woman. She was the first Black woman to have her own PR agency. She was the first Black woman to be on the board of a radio company in London. She's extremely inspirational. And one of the first episodes I'm going to load as well is with the wonderful Rachel Ellnor, who is a mentor of mine and actually a lovely friend now, who is the ex-Dragon's Den. So he was the creator of Red Letter Days. So she's gone from dragon to Dharma. She's had this amazing journey over the last 20 years, this spiritual awakening, where now she's still a businesswoman, but now in the kind of evolutionary space with her platform source.tv. So we talk about that change, and we talk about family and her life as an entrepreneur with, bringing up 5 boys. So that's a fascinating conversation. So I hope that you are going